Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, Force here, and today we will be talking about the current endgame in the World of Warcraft. Now just as a reminder, this is coming from the perspective of someone who took a 2-year break from WoW and just recently, within the past few weeks, has gotten back into it. So I've now reached level 90, I am now at the endgame, and going through this has been a very interesting experience. It's definitely much different, in some ways better, and I feel like in some ways worse than how I recall endgame being in WoW. And I'd just like to quickly go over that. So the first thing I'd like to touch on are the different options. One of the great changes that they've made is that there, immediately when you hit level 90, there's so much you can do. You've got your basic traditional dungeons for Mist of Pandaria that you can run through, the normal dungeons if you will. And then there's also heroic mode. Beyond that, there are scenarios, which are these little 3-person events that you can take place in. There are both regular and heroic available for those. Heroic require you to have a set group of 3, but the normal ones you can just queue up as random and you'll get placed with other people. There's also looking for raid, or the raid finder as it is called, and LFR is really interesting because it's basically a more casual approach to raiding. It's much easier in terms of the mechanics and the damage you're taking. It's designed to be played with a pug, and as you know, pugs can be pretty dreadful in terms of the people you get placed with. So to have content that will provide you some decent item level endgame gear, not as comparable to the normal raiding. This is definitely a scaled down version of it, but that's rather interesting. And then there was just recently also the introduction of flexible raiding, which lets you adjust the raid size. It's also going to distribute based on the size of your raid, the loot that you get, and then there are also separate lockout features from other raid lockouts available for the flex raiding. So many options. There's so much you can do in terms of PvE right as soon as you hit the max level, which is currently 90. I'd like to talk about heroic dungeons just for a moment, because that's primarily what I've been doing. That and then the raid finder. Heroic dungeons are not as I recall. In other words, they're not so heroic. As soon as I hit level 90, I was able to queue up in heroic dungeons. Now, I remember heroics in the past being a rather difficult task, and it took, probably at least a week of gearing up your character in normal instances. It took at least a week of gearing up in normal instances, plus trying to find crafted gear before you could even attempt to step into heroic. I hit 90 right away, I queued up for heroic, and I had no problem tanking. I mean, it was not even remotely difficult. It didn't look like the healer was stressed at all. Rather easy. Now, I guess the thing is that it appears that they have adjusted what heroic means. Heroic seems like it's level 90 content. You've got the normal dungeons while you're leveling up from 85 to 90, and then you hit 90 and you pretty much go into heroic. They've basically retooled what that means. And while it's different than what I remember, I guess it's okay because of the fact that there are other more difficult options, and specifically that's going to be the raiding. Scenarios from what I've seen are face roll easy. You don't even need to have a tank or healer. Pretty much you can run 3 DPS. They almost appear to be designed for 3 DPS, and you're able to do these scenarios. And if you're wondering, if you don't know what scenarios are, they're just these little events. That's basically it. It's basically like doing a quest with 2 other people, and you're fighting against epic enemies. The raid finder, the looking for raid, very, very easy, not difficult. The raids that I've tried have been just not challenging, but again, I understand that the challenge is supposed to come from the non-raid finder raids, where you're actually playing with a set group of people. It gets significantly more difficult. Unfortunately, that's nothing that I've been able to do yet, because honestly, I'm pretty much playing this game by myself right now. And that's something I'd like to touch on. One of the positives that I think with the new approach, with so many options between Dungeon Finder, Scenarios, Raid Finder, and Flex Raids, it's that if you don't have a core group of people, if you don't have a big raiding guild, you can still experience the end game. And I actually think this is a positive change. In the past, I was that guy who was in one of the best guilds on the server doing these crazy hard raids, and progressing through content. Nowadays, I'm not that person. I don't have nearly as much time to play. I don't have my friends on the server anymore, and that's not an option for me. But the fact that I can still experience this endgame content without having to devote a significant amount of time into finding people on my server that I can raid with and gearing up for that process and everything like that, I think that's actually a positive change. It is definitely much more casual. I am definitely much more casual with this game than I used to be, but given the point in my life that I am and time restrictions and things like that, for me this is a good thing. I can certainly see why people would view it as negative. In fact, old me would have said, look at all these scrubs raiding now. That's basically what I would have said, and I guess I'm even saying it now. Look at all these scrubs that are able to raid now. Those people probably miffed by these changes, but honestly for me, in the current spot that I am in my life, and just for the greater good, you know? Now, it used to be the case that I think it was like less than 10% of people were able to experience the end game of WoW. Now it seems like pretty much everyone can because of looking for raid and flex raid and all that stuff. It's just much more accessible. The other bit of PvE content that was recently added was this place called Timeless Isle. Unfortunately though, that's something that I have got zero experience with because unfortunately I am on a server completely dominated by the Alliance. And I don't mean that the Alliance are so much better than the Horde players, but the population distribution is I think somewhere like 90% Alliance and 10% Horde. It could be even worse than that. It is really bad. Every time I've ever gone to Timeless Isle, there's been at least 50 Alliance there, and I think I've seen one other Horde player in the past week. It is terrible. I'm playing on US Kel'Thuzad's server, and the distribution between Alliance and Horde is awful. It looks like in order to experience Timeless Isle and not just get ganked by 10 people every time I go there, I'm probably going to have to do a server transfer, and that's rather disappointing because I guess this is another great way to get endgame gear. So that's all the PvE stuff. What about PvP? Well, as I've talked about many times in the past, PvP is traditionally my favorite way to play games, RPGs, really any sort of game. Playing against other people is typically what I enjoy doing the most. PvP, there's obviously more, you know, there's more battlegrounds than I remember. They have been the additional battlegrounds with the expansion as expected. And it's pretty easy, as always. You can just queue up, hop right in, you get your honor points, and you're able to spend that on gear. Something that's really disappointing to me though is I found out that recently with this most recent patch 5.4, PvPers are getting destroyed in open world PvP by PvEers. I guess the primary reason is because with the introduction of PvP power and how it works best in battlegrounds, I guess there's a scaling of the gear, and the fact that PvEers have access to higher item level gear, it just seems, I've been reading up that people in full PvP gear are getting obliterated in open world content by people in full PvE gear. That even further adds to the conundrum of me trying to experience the Timeless Isle because, you know, what am I gonna do? I loved the concept of I am a hardcore PvPer, I've got the best PvP gear, I'm going to destroy anybody, be it in Battlegrounds, Arena, or Open World PvP because of that, the skill and the gear that I have. Now it's no longer the case. People who raid dungeons are now destroying people who just PvP when it comes to the open world content, and I'm not so happy about that change. I feel like if you're dedicated to PvP and you've got PvP gear, whether it's in Battlegrounds, Arena, or the open world, you should be having the advantage. But PvEers are literally doing 2 to 3 times the damage, they've got higher health pools, it's just kind of crazy. I think that's, again, largely attributed to the fact that they've got access to higher item level gear, and that resilience is now baseline, meaning they don't need to put resilience on their gear to be effective in PvP scenarios. But anyway, that's that. Just wanted to briefly update you guys as to how the WoW endgame has changed and my impressions on it. Like I said, it's much more accessible now. And at the point in my life that I currently am, I think that's a great change. I'm pretty happy about that. Not happy about PvPers getting destroyed in open world PvP. Maybe that's something that will get adjusted by a bump up in PvP item level gear. I'm not entirely sure what Blizzard plans to do, if anything, about that. But that is that, so thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Quick little update onto my adventures through the world of Warcraft. I will continue to keep you guys updated. I am still continuing to enjoy this as we await additional MMOs. just a matter of time. Elder Scrolls Online, EverQuest next, WildStar. I'm excited for all of that. But right now, I'm really enjoying WoW. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you like the content, please subscribe. And as always, keep watching and keep owning.